Pickaxe.
Hello, and welcome back to the Review of Death, your fortnightly home for Doctor Who news and reviews. I'm Matthew Toffolo. I'm joined, as always, by Billy Garratt-John. Billy,
yes.
Got any news?
I hear I was trying to think of the name of a stock market, but I can't think of anything, so that's fucked. No, I haven't got any news. How are you?
Got any news? No, I think apparently Disney are happy with Doctor Who.
Oh, there's a
So they're
surprise.
saying?
There's a surprise.
Yeah.
I also hear that a certain war between the land and the sea might be going into production very soon. They had a big cast read through the other day.
Yeah, Ruth Madeley is going to be in it as well, isn't she, apparently?
Oh,
that was announced.
interesting.
Yeah, so basically anyone from UNIT is going to be in it. Yeah, interesting to see what that's going to be like. Obviously, for us, I think we're probably more excited to see what the Sea Devils are going to look like. Are they going to, will they go full Legend of the Sea Devils and make them like they just stepped out of the 70s? Or are they going to go in the opposite direction and go full 2010 Silurians and cock them right up?
I don't care.
That's not to say that what Legend of the Sea Devils did was the correct way of doing things, because I think they were probably a bit too 70s. I think they could have modernised them a little bit. Do you know what I mean?
I just want to see fishnets. I don't really care about anything else, to be completely honest.
Sea Devil in fishnets and suspenders. That's all Billy wants.
That's the look. That's all we're looking for. I'm sure there'll be people chomping at the bit to see Russell Tovey with a fish head on, gills, and some fishnets.
This is the thing. If you've got these big stars, you ain't putting them in a big fish head, are you?
No, you got to bring him. Well, Doctor Who has that ability to bring great actors down to a certain level, doesn't it? To humble them,
But maybe that's why Russell cast people that he'd already used, because he was like, good actors, but can't show your faces because people are going to think you're playing the other characters. So
interesting.
We'll stick a rubber ad over your face.
Could be. I mean, they didn't have that rule with Peter Capaldi, I suppose, but you know,
they didn't. No.
Let's see how that becomes a thing over the next couple of weeks and months, because that's going to be interesting to follow, isn't it?
And last time I said to you, is this going to be on Disney Plus? Because I wasn't sure and didn't particularly care. But it turns out it will be on Disney Plus. It is going to be a Disney Plus series. So it's all part of the big Doctor Who Grand Plan Disney extravaganza. So apparently execs are happy with Doctor Who and where it sits. There's been a lot of talk lately on Twitter of a few people being worried that is Doctor Who going to get cancelled in light of The Acolyte being cancelled.
Oh, right.
Because obviously The Acolyte was cancelled because it was a massive budget series and nobody watched it.
Wow.
Apart from the vocal few on Twitter who are now blaming that, it's all these YouTubers and stuff who said it was shit have caused this to happen.
What did you think of it as the resident Star Warser?
I thought it was a pile of shite.
Oh, really? Why?
I thought it was very badly written, badly acted crap. It was just not good. Not good at all. So sue me. But yeah, I was not surprised when they said it was cancelled. It was just very all over the place. They did some like weird character things, and the lead actress a lot was expected of the lead actress, and I just don't think she was very good.
Did they bring anybody back and sully them? Is that part of the problem, or was it just sort of from the ground up not very good?
It was all new people. It was all new characters. And some of the characters were like, oh yeah, you could be good, but you've just not been written very well. There was just very strange creative choices. And I think there was like a lot of people, that the idea was that it was set like 100 years before the first Star Wars film. So everyone was like, oh, okay, this is going to be very different. And it kind of wasn't. It didn't really feel like any different to any other Star Wars-y thing, other than it had a few more Jedi in it. So it was a bit bit disappointing, to be honest. But I mean, you know, I know some people liked it just because, you know, it's kind of like with Doctor Who, isn't it? Some people are like, well, so long as it's on and it's that universe that I love, I will love it no matter what. I'm at the point now where Star Wars is sort of slowly running itself into the ground because everything that's coming out just seems to be like, ugh.
What have you got left now?
I mean, I wasn't really hugely into that either, to be honest.
No, you've got Doctor Who's gone down the sink for you. Star Wars as well. That Penguin series looks all right.
Penguin looks good. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. That will probably be good.
New Masters of the Universe on the horizon.
Not at the moment. There's a new film coming out apparently.
Oh, okay. So you've got
they'll butcher that, I'm sure.
You've got the Robert Pattinson Batman to keep you going, and that's about it at the moment.
Yeah, and the X-Men cartoon.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, but I mean that might go tits up because they fired the showrunner.
Oh dear.
For mysterious reasons. That's a whole big saga. Oh, it's all kicking off.
Wonder what was on his hard drive.
Disney Plus.
I've got nothing. I've got Doctor Who and that's it. So I'm in deep trouble, and I've got terrible hay fever. So apologies everybody for the sniffling and snuffling and general face thing that's going on. If you're listening, you shouldn't be able to tell.
So obviously people were worried that The Acolyte being cancelled because budget was part of the concern. But as it works out in terms of Doctor Who's budget per episode is so minuscule in comparison, and obviously Disney Plus don't own Doctor Who, you know, BBC own Doctor Who, so people were like, oh, does this mean Doctor Who could be in for it? But I don't think that it would work in the same way because Disney Plus, although they're putting a little bit of money into it, they're hosting it. I think it's a very different kettle of fish. I know obviously you and I have been on here moaning about Doctor Who on Disney Plus a lot and been going like, it's going to get cancelled because we're miserable feckers. But I think it's probably okay until we hear otherwise, especially now that we're hearing all this stuff that, execs are happy and Julie Gardner's gone off to New York or gone off to wherever, to LA, to meet with the commissioners.
I'd imagine
Disney Plus.
They wouldn't have said that meeting was happening if
the outcome was we had this lovely, we went off to LA and had this meeting and they cancelled us.
And they said, please never come and visit us again.
Yeah. They said, what was that?
You never know. Anyway, this week on the Review of Death, we are going back to 1964 and an episode that I realised listening back to it, I said was the best two-parter in all of Doctor Who. And not only am I going to take that back and say all of classic Doctor Who, I'm now also going to go further back and go, it's all right. I think I'd slightly overblown my love and appreciation for the story, but it's been a long time since I last watched it. But I remember the excitement of getting that beginnings box set and getting An Unearthly Child, the Daleks I'd seen tons of times, An Unearthly Child not so much. But I hadn't seen Edge of Destruction until that DVD came out. And I remember being really taken by it. And I remember really liking, it's short, it's to the point, there's some really nice bits of acting, there's some really nice character moments in there. But watching it again for this, I don't know what I was smoking when I watched it, but it's good fun, but it's hampered by a couple of things, I think, and I guess we'll dig down into those. But what's your thinking prior to coming to it here, and then after the fact?
I first watched it when it came out on VHS back in the whenevers, I guess early 2000s, late 90s. And I remember being like, what is this? Now, it didn't really gel with me as a kid. And I think there's sort of promises within some of the dialogue that don't sort of go anywhere, in as much as, there's this this idea that, maybe something has got into the TARDIS, and you've got all this creepy stuff with Susan saying like, oh, well, maybe it's hidden in one of us and all this sort of stuff. She delivers that. Like, I got to say, Carol Ann Ford, she plays a very good sort of sinister baddie. She's very good in those moments where she's got to be slightly unhinged or she's got to say something with menace. She's really, really good. But then she very quickly reverts back to, grandfather!
Yeah.
And it's just like,
I was going to say,
shut your mouth.
all of that was so frustrating to watch. Because it's like, there's an Amdram quality to Doctor Who of this time anyway, where it sort of feels like you're really throwing that line to Rosette. But then you get Carol Ann Ford in this story and in others, like she's the most brittle character that's ever existed in any form of media. Sneezing seems to break something in her body. She's always bloody injured. She's always asking for help from everybody. And I can see why she doesn't look back on Susan as she was at that time that fondly as a character, because all she's got to do is just constantly.
It is just hysterics over nothing.
Chill out.
Hysterics over nothing.
So that does get a bit tiresome, and there's a lot of that in this story.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, like, it's stuff like that. Like as a kid, I was like, oh my god, there's one of them's possessed or something, and I was like, that'd be a great story. Unfortunately, that is not this story.
No, because we go through several permutations of what it could be. Like you say, it's either something's got in and is just skulking about the TARDIS, something's possessed them, or it's the TARDIS's energy itself that has somehow escaped from the column because the column's got slightly too high than it should normally do. It's for a third ever story in the history of a TV series, it's really trying to lay some foundations for stuff in this episode.
Yes.
And it is foundational, actually. One of the big things I've taken away from it is how important it is for that TARDIS crew going forward, having the story.
Oh, yeah.
But
very much so.
It's trying to...
It feels like this is the turning point for the whole series going forward, really.
Yeah. And that makes sense
in terms of
because
the characters.
Up until, what is it, the part 2, the brink of disaster. Up until that point, that was the last episode that had been bought and paid for as far as the BBC were concerned. They scheduled it for 13 weeks, and that was the end of the first 13-week run of Doctor Who.
Yeah.
So, it's interesting to see where it leaves everybody at the end of this, because you could imagine... Remember that weird kids' adventure serial that ran for 13 weeks that had a police box? And you can imagine it ending here. And, the Daleks are obviously pop culture icons, but it hasn't left much of an impression yet,
Yeah. No, it is interesting, isn't it?
But, it obviously becomes...
it could really have been like one of those funny, little charity shop DVDs that, maybe 40 people on Twitter... talk about and go and see a BFI event and are very excited for. But it really could have just fallen into obscurity. It's really interesting. In another universe, that happened.
Exactly. So this starts off where the Daleks left off. You can see where Chris Chibnall got his inspiration from Series 11 from, because there's a lot of that through the 60s in general, isn't there?
Yeah, and even into the 80s, isn't it? When Davison takes over, there's that sort of sense that we'll try and keep the narrative thread going a little bit, but it's stronger here, certainly. And I like it. I really like that stories follow into one another. It does make it feel like a part of a larger story rather than just, we're dipping in and out. We feel like we're following these characters all the way through.
Exactly.
Which is really nice.
Everybody's lying prone on the floor. They've crashed or something, although the Doctor keeps insisting there wasn't a crash. No,
the TARDIS can't crash.
All of that. It's like, come on.
And then the Doctor's like, if it had crashed, I'd know about it.
Yeah, but then he is only sort of later. He's like, no, it definitely didn't crash.
Yeah. I love the fact that at this point, the Doctor really has not got an effing clue on how the TARDIS works. Yeah. He is literally clueless.
Even to the end where he's like, it has a sentience of a sort because it's a machine that needs to do things. Yeah. Obviously, we're looking at this through rose-tinted spectacles were looking at this at a time where the TARDIS was embodied by somebody, and there's this whole, I remember when you first dry humped the console, Doctor, when you were in your white hair and cane phase. But
Don't touch the console, Chesterton. It might be a bit sticky over there.
I've seen the problem here with the fast return. It's caked in something. It won't quite budge. So I love the fact that when Barbara wakes up,
it's mercury. I'd go and fill it up.
That's why he snuck back to the TARDIS and the Daleks to have a quick Tommy tank. Barbara, when she wakes up, she ignores everybody except Ian and goes straight for Ian.
Yeah,
and it's interesting. They kind of
you would, wouldn't you?
You would, of course, you would. Who's the only person?
You think
that's
not that miserable old bastard? Or
exactly. He's going to try and chuck you out the back door into deep space. Yeah. She's just going to run around screaming. So let's go for the dishy one. And it's funny. Everybody seems to have reset into this weird sort of catatonic state.
Yeah.
Like Ian is fucking flipping the fuck out, man. He's taking some fucking pills. He
is really off his head.
He is.
I think this is the problem I have with this story, is that there is so much unexplained. I don't really understand.
But they try
why are they all like this?
They try to, and it just confounds it.
Yeah, it makes it even more confusing. Why do they all think, why have they all lost their memories and stuff? And, why are they all getting this pain at the back of the neck? I mean, I know they try and say, it's the TARDIS telling you that something's wrong. But how, I guess now we could say, is it like the telepathic circuits? I don't know, but it's weird. It's odd. I mean, it's an interesting mystery. And, as a four-hander, it works really well in that respect. And it feels like a bit of theatre.
Yes, very much
because it's all in one, you could stage this. Don't know why you'd bother. I think you'd confound everybody watching it. But
I was going to say that. If you'd missed the first two stories and you came into this fresh, you'd have no fucking clue what's going on. Where are we? Who are they?
No. I mean, to be honest, even having watched the first two stories, you're still struggling to work out what's happening.
Absolutely. I put here as well, more than any other episode, this feels like a theatrical production. And I guess it's because it's the only story that just has the regulars for the full run. It's nice and tight as well. With a bit of expansion on certain things, you probably could turn this into a good Doctor Who stage show. Who
directed this?
So there were two directors. Paddy Russell was supposed to do them. I think Mervyn Pinfield did the first one, and somebody called something else Cox did the second episode.
I was going to say, because there's a real sort of Mervyn Pinfield shot in episode 1 that I really like, when the Doctor goes and he sits down in the chair and he's in the foreground, and then you've got Ian and Susan in the background in sort of soft focus, and it's lovely blocking. There's some nice little moments like
that. There's a very low shot as well. That's very Mervyn Pinfield as well, where the camera's right on the floor as Barbara comes in from. And this is another big part of the story is you see different parts of the TARDIS. You'd seen bits of it through previous stories, but you get to see where they sleep. You get to see the TARDIS food machine, which is always good fun. Obviously, I think we'd seen it before when Ian unwraps that Mars bar. Is that in the Daleks?
Yeah, in the Daleks. But I like the sense that this feels like a lived-in place.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. You get the sense that they are traveling in this thing and they are living in this thing. Whereas later on, it does kind of feel like a bit of like a bus. Like a London bus. Okay, we're going to go from A to B, as opposed to we've got our own little spaces that we retreat to and spend time in when we're sick of each other.
Exactly.
And no wonder they're all so bloody miserable, because those beds look like they would absolutely break your back.
It's got to be one of the most miserable living spaces I can imagine. You're with this crotchety old racist, his absolutely clueless granddaughter, and
always shouting and screaming.
And then she has a bloody reason to shout, because Susan gets possessed by this
Yeah.
Whatever the fuck it is. It turns out that it's just like cabin fever and paranoia at the end of the day. So the doctor really should check her in somewhere. If that's her first recourse when backed into a corner, is to grab a pair of fucking scissors and start swiping at people. So that's kind of the indomitable kind of visual from this episode, isn't it? Is Susan sort of, stabbing towards Ian. And, I can understand that. Here's this strange, dashing young man who's taken you to bed and you're like, I don't know who the fuck you are. Can you please get out of my bedroom? I can understand why she'd be a bit stabby.
Yeah,
she's trying
with her hair. Her hair is like this.
I know, it's wild.
She looks crazed. She looks properly crazed. It's a scary moment. That.
Yeah,
it is a scary moment. Did they get complaints?
Yeah,
I'm sure I heard somewhere they had some complaints about that because those scissors do look pretty bloody threatening. They're going to do some damage for sure. She sort of flip flops, doesn't she? In this, Susan, like when you have those moments of menace.
Yeah.
And then she's sort of like, oh, actually, no, they're all right, these two.
Yeah.
And then she'll suddenly switch again and she'll be like, oh, yes. And, and then as soon as the doctor says, all right, I'm chucking them off the ship, she's like, oh, no, grandfather, you can't do that.
There's a bit where she suggests, she's the first one to suggest something's got in and is going to attack them. And then she overhears, I think, the doctor and Ian having a conversation where the two of them sort of, suggest, maybe something's got in there. And they have a chat.
I think it's Ian and Barbara. I think it's Ian and Barbara having their chat,
and then part of her kind of going wild, sort of paranoia thing is, I heard you two talking. I heard you two saying there might be something on board. It's like, well, that was your idea. Okay, fine, whatever. So the doctor's scrabbling around trying to figure out what's going on, but he's had a knock to the head. So he's sort of out of action for the first quarter of the first episode anyway.
Yeah. And I love all that stuff. It's so 60s Doctor Who, like you were saying, like with the food machine and all that kind of stuff. But I love the bandages that you wrap it around your head and the colour will fade away the more that the wound is healed, all that sort of stuff. And it's the same as like the everlasting matches that are in like the Target novelisation of the Daleks and all that stuff. It's a very sort of David Whittaker-y thing that he just sort of embellishes on Doctor Who, which is great.
Exactly. It's an important episode, this, as a kind of bottleneck, because it does give us a look into all their psyches. I think it's fair to say, Barbara comes out of this the best out of everybody.
Yes. Yeah.
Ian seems to, of the two of them, be the one that's the most kind of mind-bothered by what's going on. And then obviously Susan is useless, and the Doctor is planning to kill them all in their sleep anyway.
Yeah, the fucking doctor's like roofing them.
I couldn't believe that. And then he goes into their rooms and leers over them with his hands in his pockets. Yeah, each of them. And Ian wakes up and goes, "Oh, Doctor, my head and my bum for some reason is quite achy as well." Like fucking hell. There's a lot of toing and froing. Like nobody actually knows what the problem is. The Doctor keeps suggesting, it must be you. It must be you two that have caused this. And he does a lot of quite menacing, like jabbing of his finger and pointing. And there's a really nasty bit where Ian's like prone on the floor. And
I love
the
this.
Doctor like barks at him. It's like William Hartnell changes his tone of voice completely from kind of I'm acting in a whimsical kind of way and just sort of spits at him. It's really, really nasty.
It's very malicious. He goes, "You're getting off the ship, Chesterton. Yes, now get up." It's so good. And he's like, yeah, he's a shit. He's a proper shit. We went back to back, didn't we, today with this episode, having two shitty old doctors,
two crotchety old arseholes, and it's like he hasn't reached an endearing stage yet. He does at the end of this story, and I think, we've been sort of teasing it, but in terms of what this story does for this whole TARDIS crew and for the shape of the show going forward is it really puts them in a real backs against the wall situation, which isn't overly satisfying in that they don't conquer it because it's just sort of the TARDIS is having a funny 5 minutes because the fast return switch is jammed.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you finally get that reveal, there is a little bit of pathos in that. There's a little bit of like, all of that over nothing. But then also, because you've had all these cooler variations on what's going on suggested, like something's got in, or they're possessed, or the TARDIS is nearing critical meltdown. When it is revealed, oh, it's this spring, I haven't got enough fucking WD-40, Chesterfield. It's a bit like, oh, God, what a letdown.
Yeah.
But
it is such a letdown. As a kid, I remember being like, you fucking what? what are you talking about?
Fucking what? But then you get to the end and it's all worth it. Like, for all of, you know, this episode that we've criticised and we'll go on to criticise, it's worth it because you do feel, and it feels organic, that they are all getting along now. And that sort of, the paranoia, I think it's different, like the Doctor being crotchety for the rest of his run, because that is just what William Hartnell does. But the paranoia that is laced through those first 3 stories just disappears after part 2 of this adventure.
Oh yeah, definitely. And like, I love the fact that it's all dragged up, isn't it? Like everything that has happened all gets dragged up. As soon as the Doctor starts accusing Ian and Barbara of tampering with something, you know, Barbara is very quick to be like, shut the fuck up, you know. You'd be dead if it wasn't for us.
You should get on your hands and knees and thank us. You know, and
it's like, whoa, you know, it's good. It's really good. It's the character stuff is really well written. You know, for all of the stuff that we laugh at with this story, whether it's, you know, hysterical Susan or, you know, some of the fluffs. You know, there's some Hartnell fluffs in this that always make me chuckle. But
there's one where he talks about you and Chesterton knocked both but Barbara and I and Susan and I unconscious. It's
it's so good. It's so good.
He just about holds on to it, because you can either like play it as, okay, he's a mad old bloke, or he's so, which seems to be the case, he's so full of anger and like incredulous rage that he can't help but sort of skip over his words. And but you know, Jesus Christ, we're only 3 stories in and Bill's already having trouble.
But what is remarkable is that he has that soliloquy towards the end in the darkness, and he manages to get through it. Not only get through it, but he does it so well. He delivers it beautifully. And it's always, I love that little sequence, you know, when you see that real sort of childish like wonder of the science of everything, and it's nice to see that other side of the Doctor in this story, because so much of this story is him, just like you said, being paranoid and pointing the finger and just being kind of unpleasant, generally speaking. So then to see that side of him is nice, and then of course the eventual sort of softening of him, which then carries on for the rest of the series, because I think, and I'm not sure if maybe this was something from Hartnell, maybe this was something from higher up, who knows. But I do think, imagine if the series carried on with Hartnell playing it exactly the way he'd been playing it for those first 2 stories. You know, it would have got a bit tiring. I think, you know, it needed to have that softening where, okay, we need to all get along. We can't just keep on, you know, being sort of unwilling bedfellows.
Definitely. And they have their moment here. It's funny when you look at, like, I think we spoke about it not long ago, but the dynamic the 5th Doctor has with his companions, and the way that is framed as everybody is an unwilling participant. You know, nobody actually wants to be there, really. But they never have a moment where, apart from Adric's death, but then, you know, it has a negligible effect, really, on the way that they all interact with one another, ultimately. There's never really a moment where they all kind of get together and they're like, oh, look, this was silly. Look, let's just put our differences aside and let's just, you know, enjoy ourselves here. Because I love that last scene where the Doctor goes to apologise to Barbara, because, you know, he's slinging accusations left, right and centre all the way through the story. And Susan is really insistent that he ought to go and apologise to her. And he's all, you know, at the start is like not really at all interested in doing that. But then, you know, with a slight air of reluctance, but actually you feel like he realizes that's the right thing to do. He goes and apologizes to Barbara. I mean, fuck Ian, whatever, Ian can deal with it himself. He's a man. He can suck it up. And he has a nice scene with Barbara, and they sort of talk about the clothes they're going to wear because of the cold climate they've just landed in. And he offers her this coat and they link arms and walk into the console room. It doesn't cover the multitude of sins he's committed, like wanting to stove a fucking caveman's head in, getting them embroiled with the Daleks because of his obsession with them.
Or potentially throw them out into the void of space.
Into deep space, into the white void of space, which has a flaw when you look through the doors. But it doesn't cover all of that. But in order to get to the point where all of them are just getting on, you can kind of forgive the fact that a lot is glossed over, and it's a really nicely acted scene between Bill and Babs and Jackie. It's really nice.
Because at the end of the day, is Barbara figures it out, really.
Yes.
Because the Doctor is sort of so like, no, there's a hard and fast scientific explanation, and then you've got Barbara sort of saying, well, maybe it's the TARDIS warning us, and he's like, oh, no, don't be stupid. Don't be a stupid woman. So it's nice to have that moment when the Doctor turns around to her and says, oh, we must look after you, you're very valuable.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, actually now I can see that, you know what, you aren't just these stowaways that I've ended up being stuck with. You are actually very valuable members of the team, because I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. No. Susan's hopeless. So please look after us.
Doctor, thank you very much for your apology. I really appreciate it. Can you not drug us again, though? Is it like, would it be possible for you to not slip something in our drinks? That whole scene where he comes in with the tray of drinks and he offers them out to everybody. And there's just that, Barbara comes over and takes a drink and she walks over to Ian and he just has one of those downstage looks like, I've slipped a little bit of Rohypnol in there. Not my first time. And then goes over to Susan and gives her a drink. It's kind of unforgivable, really, isn't it, for the Doctor to be behaving in that way?
It is. Can you imagine if something like that happened in Doctor Who now?
I mean,
what would it wouldn't, no. But can you imagine the discourse that there would be? I mean, I'm surprised that in Twice Upon Time, stuff like that never came up.
Yeah.
Like, remember when I used to roofie my companions? Careful, Bill.
Yes. Ian was rather slippery that night, yes. I remember.
So it definitely happened, because when they're about to leave the TARDIS at the end, the Doctor and Ian go to hold hands
they
and then get cut off. Yeah. So much been going on.
Ian goes, I was pretending to be asleep. That's my thing.
I didn't drink anything.
I didn't have a sip, Doctor. You can have me whenever you like. So
as I walk around the TARDIS in my dressing gown and nothing else.
Yeah, Ian shows quite a bit of leg in this story at the end there when he collapses.
Yeah.
He makes sure he gets a lot of that thigh on show.
Yeah. I hope he's got his underpants on.
Yeah, probably not, knowing Bill. So, I love. Let's talk about William Russell, because William Russell was was the reason why we were doing this story.
He
very recently passed away, and he was
ripe old age of 99.
99, good for him, brilliant stuff. Yeah. And I think we've said this before. I think we talked about this when the news of his passing sort of came out, but he brings a character to sort of a thankless role in the series, and it's a role that sort of ends with Harry Sullivan, and you sort of realise that if they're going in this direction of always having like younger doctors, or doctors that are of an age who could be action heroes and fend for themselves or whatever. And the idea with the fourth Doctor was they would have somebody old enough where Harry Sullivan had to do the heavy lifting, and then you realise, that role's kind of pointless because Tom can do it all himself. So for William Russell to come on and probably, if he isn't told to his face, work out pretty quickly I've got to be the dashing action hero. I've really got to be the lead of this series, especially because for the first 3 stories, that guy is wholly unpleasant. And so, you know, in the sort of patriarchal society, I've got to be the one that steps forward and be the hero. And he so is. There's a great bit where I think it's just before the Doctor offers them all his spiked drinks, where the Doctor points the finger of accusation again and says, it's this, you're doing it now. And William Russell, like, is just like, I can't remember what the exact line is, but he just goes, you just fucking said it was the fault locator, you old, you know, like, are you, you're fucking off your nut. And it, like, the way he delivers the line is with that kind of real sense of, you're not making any sense, you just said it was this, you know. And I love that. I love it. It's just like the facade of being the one who's got kind of put together and, no, step aside, ladies, I'll deal with this old man. He just completely drops and he's like, you're off your nut. It's great.
Yeah. No, he's very good. And like in this story, you know, we see a sort of very different side to Ian that I don't think we really ever see before or after. You know, when we see him in a very vulnerable state, because his mind is, like you said, he feels more addled than most in this story, particularly at the beginning. And then later on as well, after he's been roofied, you know, when he's trying to stop the Doctor from touching the console by strangling him, which is, you know, always the perfect way to stop someone from touching something is
Doctor, I've got Vaseline. Next time, just ask, all right?
No, but he's very good. And I mean, he almost takes sort of a backseat to Barbara in this story, where she is very much the driving force and like trying to figure it all out. And obviously, like you said, you know, it's she who gets the apology from the Doctor. But yeah, I mean, it does such a good job, regardless of whether the plot makes an awful amount of sense. You know, there's some lovely moments, like we said, with the scissors, you know, the melting clocks. I mean, I don't know why Barbara loses her fucking mind when she sees that melting clock.
Screams at that clock. And it's then put down as a clue for later on. So Barbara has the final moment of going, I think we've been looking at nothing but clues. And everybody at home's going, but what clues? Nothing is...
have we?
No, especially when she goes, so the clock stopped because it needed to remind us of time. Right, but you're in a time machine, so by definition, you should sort of be aware of that all the time.
Yeah. And the fact that there's a clock there is making you aware that there's time.
Yeah, and then when Susan runs over to the fault locator and says it's going off every 15 seconds, and Barbara says, it's the absence of time now is making us aware of the existence of time because it's happening every 15 seconds. And there's even a line where someone goes, Susan, the clocks aren't working. How did you work that out? Like she doesn't... I mean, I know that she wasn't the brightest fucking kid in class. That's why they followed her home. But she can count to 15, I'm fairly sure.
Yeah.
But then there's another bit where I think it's maybe Ian goes, and the food machine registering as empty, but was still giving us stuff. And it's like, what clue is that? To what? Pardon?
It's just buggered Chesterton as well.
Exactly. For anybody who was brought up in the 60s, I'd like to know, was a dispensed bag of water a normal thing? Is that something that was from space year 31, 37 in the context of Doctor Who being made back then? Or because I know that you used to be able to get milk from cardboard boxes in vending machines back then. So I wonder...
Yeah, cartons, I think you call them.
Cartons, yes. Not cardboard boxes of milk.
Here's your cardboard box of milk, ma'am.
2 foot by 2 foot, full of fucking freshly squeezed. Cartons of cardboard milk. I'll stop speaking now. Yeah, it's nice to see.
Late in the day for you.
Yeah, it's late in the day, and
and your brain is addled with hay fever.
Addled with hay fever. It feels like it's being inflated from the inside out. We see the operations of the TARDIS, which is quite nice. You know, obviously we've got the fast return switch, which plays a big part of the story, but the scanner, which is another thing that Susan loses her fucking mind over. Don't touch the scanner.
Yeah.
And that's before she even realizes that it's giving people electric shocks. You know, like But we see a beautiful field in. Barbara goes, that looks like England. It's like what no other country has rolling green fields like that. Could be fucking Cardigan Bay. You don't know, love. You don't have a clue. Could be Wales. Could be South Wales.
It could be, yeah.
And you hear the song of, bird song.
The bird song, yeah.
And the doctor goes, when the ship's doors open, it shows England. And when the ship's doors close, it shows Lanzarote or whatever, it's
Quinis. Shitty old planet, yeah. Quinis, yeah.
From the fourth dimension.
And again, that's another thing that's really nice is that we get to hear a bit of backstory that, it didn't all just begin here with an unearthly child. The Doctor and Susan had a life beforehand that, we've just not seen on screen, which is always good. And there's even a bit at the beginning when the Doctor's unconscious.
Yes.
And he's sort of rambling in his sleep and he says, I can't take you back, Susan. I can't. And I thought, is that him saying, I can't take you back to Earth in the 20th century? Or is that him saying, I can't take you back home to Gallifrey?
That was how I read it. Is that
sort of blurred line? Yeah. So it is interesting. I like that stuff. That's one of the cool things about 60s Doctor Who, or like particularly this period of 60s Doctor Who, where it's just those little nuggets of information that are sort of superfluous, really, but it does help create a picture of like, it builds up the story and the mystery of, these characters and, who is the Doctor.
Exactly.
It's great.
It is lovely. Have we had an adventure on Quinis? Is that something that's happened on Big Finish?
Big Finish has done an adventure on Quinis. I think Mark Platt wrote it, actually.
Very nice.
Yeah, so it's probably good.
It probably is good.
It's Mark Platt.
I love those glimpses, and then so the Doctor, there's like a sequence that they say happens. So you see Earth, you see England / Cambran, then you see Quinis, then you see a planet, then a planet a bit further away, and then a planet quite a bit further away, and then it flares white. And that is this whole thing, and all of the the way that people are misbehaving and slipping drugs to each other in their drinks is the TARDIS's way of telling them that something is wrong. Yeah.
We're going backwards very quickly.
Why
and if you don't sort it out, we're going to blow up.
No, why the TARDIS couldn't just show an infographic of the fast return switch with an arrow pointing to it like that, I don't know.
The fault locator is pretty shit.
I don't understand how it works.
It's just like, there's something wrong. Actually tell us. Actually tell us what's wrong. Don't just like, because the Doctor's like, normally it would just tell us one thing's wrong, but it's telling us that the whole thing is going wrong.
The whole thing is fucked, Barbara. Don't you understand? And he goes, for every fault, one bulb goes off. And all of the bulbs have gone off.
He really, he talks to her like she's thick as shit.
I know.
He's like, I drive a car, Doctor Who. If a light comes up on the dashboard, I know that there's a fault.
But he does it to Susan later. Again, fine. I know that she may have skipped a couple of lessons, but, he goes, now, when I press this button, this thing happens. Excuse me. And when I stop pressing the button, then he sneezes. And he goes, fuck, sorry, line. And he goes, and then when I release my finger, the thing stops happening. And Susan goes, oh, grandfather, so when the thing was pressed, something was happening, and when it wasn't, it wasn't. And he goes, you'll go far, my dear. And it's like, fucking hell. Like, he teaches her how torches work. That's like absolute fucking, bless her. She won't fully understand what I'm saying, but she'll get there in the end. That bit's pretty off. And like you say, we get that lovely scene at the end. Like, once they figure out that there's some sort of sequence to these images that are being shown on the scanner, the Doctor realizes that, is it that they're going back to the birth of the universe? Is that the kind of...
Yes, I think so. Yeah. Because
he does this whole thing about, the birth of a star and its planets, the start of a whole solar system and stuff. And you talked beautifully about it earlier, but it's just like, I think that's probably one of my favourite classic series scenes, or one of my favourite bits of acting from a Doctor is that moment.
Yeah.
And you can tell that he's being given the stage to do this, because everybody sort of falls away, all the lights come down, there's one big spot on Bill, and there's also a light behind his head as well. So it's like all your attention is on him. And it's, I bet they were all in the gallery going, please remember your lines. Please remember your lines. Oh, God.
Yeah.
Everything's gone so well up to this point. This is going to be a real pain in the ass to remount. We have not got time. Get your fucking lines right. And he does. And he's just so good in that moment. It's
he's excellent.
Beautiful bit of acting. Probably my favourite bit of Bill Hartnell acting that he ever did in the show.
Yeah, and it really just shows a different side to him that I don't think we've really seen up until that point. No. Obviously we know in the Daleks that, his scientific his need for that sort of information and stuff is overpowering to the point of that he'll put others in danger. But to see that childish glee, that real sort of boyish excitement, he goes from being an old man to like a kid in moments, and then that sort of side of his Doctor is a side that we start to see a lot more of as we go on, that twinkly side, that mischievous side. It's lovely. It's really well done how the layers of his Doctor sort of fall away and we get to see this other side of him.
Yeah.
Both from the writing and from Hartnell's acting. Really well done. And I imagine it's the sort of thing that Colin Baker wanted to do eventually.
Yes.
But it just didn't happen quick enough.
And there's a lovely line right at the end of the story as well, where the Doctor speaks to Barbara privately and says, as we learn about each other, we learn about ourselves, which is like, that's the core of the story, isn't it? Like, he has his moments, like you say, it's like his scientific curiosity gets the better of him in the Daleks, but you couldn't understand why he'd lead somebody into that situation based off that alone, because we don't know him. Then in this, you see that fizz of excitement that must have been the thing that tipped him over the edge to go, oh, fuck it, let's have a look at that city. And so you kind of understand it more. And as they've had this kind of cabin fever experience with each other, they all expose themselves. They all expose a different part of themselves, and almost to the point where
Ian a lot more than the rest of them.
Yeah, when he falls over, exactly. I'm sure a bollock slips out at some point, and they all give a little bit of themselves away, and so they can't come out of this story, the same. And it's nice that even if it wasn't the intention, it's like, right, now we draw a line under all that, paranoia and all the hysteria that they've experienced and they've gone through. And now we do something different, and they become a great unit. And, everybody loves this TARDIS team.
Yeah. No, they work incredibly well together. And I think, I feel like we've been shitting on Susan a lot this episode, but I think particularly when Vicky comes into it, because Vicky is less of the hysterics that Susan has, it works even better. And I think Hartnell works even better with Vicky. I think he softens even more once Vicky comes aboard. He's even more protective and even more grandfatherly. It's very interesting watching Six's Doctor Who and seeing that evolution of the characters from start to finish. It's really great. It's one of the highlights, I think, of Six's Doctor Who that really does kind of get lost a little bit as you move into the 70s and into the 80s. At times, it does feel like characters are this is their character and that's it.
And it's only until you get to their last episode where they leave, where suddenly they're like, I'm leaving because of this, which is Something that's happened for a while I haven't raised with you before, Doctor, but I'm going because I fancy this hippie. It reminds me a lot of you, but he doesn't smell as nice, unfortunately. But we're going to go at the Amazon. He's going to take you up the what? No, sorry, Doctor, we're going to go...
I've got some roofies if you want them. I've not used them in a while.
Yeah, oh my God. Yeah, after that one incident with the TARDIS going... The TARDIS was telling him that's what this is all about. The TARDIS was saying, you can't do that to people anymore. That is seriously messed up. Anything else before I turn to
anything else?
Twitter?
No, I don't think so. I think. I mean, I don't know. Do you want to rank it? Do you want to give it a rating?
I'm going to give this. I really had it as like a tentpole favorite. I do think that as a trilogy, those 3 stories are pretty perfect as like an intro to the series, because I was thinking about this earlier as well. Like, you know, the whole the formula from the first 3 episodes of each modern era of Doctor Who is present, future, past, or some variation thereupon. Whereas this was you never really get the sense that going to contemporary Earth was a priority of the production team. in terms of
not
telling stories. So they go. I think the idea was past, future, sideways was the original thing. Is that they always wanted to have an episode where they would visit another dimension or whatever, and then you get the Planet of the Giants, for example, is an example of a sideways story, or this. I do think that it is Doctor Who really stretching the remit of it's an educational series by having 30 seconds at the end where the Doctor explains to Susan how a torch works. And I think that is like, we've done our educational bit for the episode. You know, we can leave that there.
It does feel a little bit like children's telly, doesn't it? When he's explaining it to him, it does feel like a Blue Peter sort of segment.
And William Hartnell's got a little bit of look on his face when he finishes it, like, right, that's that bit done. Let's move on with the end of the story. But it's an important episode. It's, this whole fucking, the clock has stopped, therefore it's reminding us of time, and the owls aren't what they seem, and my arms bend backwards. Like, what sort of fucking Lynchian logic, dreamscape logic is this? Yeah. There's an element of, fucking hell, make your mind up. Is something in there or not? And I don't think the story knows until it needs to wrap itself up. So I'm going to give it a 6. I think that the performances are enough to get you through it if you ignore the constant wailing from Susan. But there's just a little bit of fucking get on with it, you know, that you're waiting for it to tell you why are we here?
Yeah, I agree. I think 5 or 6 is probably where I'd rank it. Just because, for exactly the same reasons, really. What have people on Twitter said about this story?
At Matt Bevan 97. I watched this one recently and thoroughly enjoyed it. It's creepy and very experimental in its style. I love the scene with the Doctor and Barbara at the end where they apologise to each other. It is a real standout, that bit. J.L.L. Cliff J says scissors, wave beds, and food machines. That's all you need to know. That's all you need to know. Leg Who Bricks. It's great until that dreadfully pathetic ending. I wish they'd stuck with the possibility that an entity had got onto the ship and possessed them, or that it was all sheer hysteria, probably caused by mercury fumes. Probably. The Doctor didn't fix it in properly. He's a terrible engineer. That's the problem. He didn't even know it's caked. The console's caked in spunk, which is why none of the controls work properly. Yeah.
He's can't rely on him at all.
No.
Can't rely on him.
I'm surprised at his age he can spaff at all, but there you go. Byron Davis. It's a good one. A very well-made thriller that showcases the characters very well. Even if the conclusion is naff, it's still a compelling exercise in character dynamics. Absolutely. Dominic Woodman, delightfully weird. One of my favourite season 1 stories, just for the sheer inventiveness so early in the season. Apparently just to fill a production gap between 2 other great stories. I like how it develops the closeness of the TARDIS crew by adding tension, if artificially. I think that's the problem, isn't it? is that it's just stretching out is it this, is it that?
Yeah.
And finally, Midwinter Makes. Super weird and experimental, and I adore every second. The cast do a lot with an extremely limited budget and set, and really sell the story. One of my favourite Hartnells. So there you go. A lot of love for Edge of Destruction.
Yeah.
I'm glad I went back to rewatch it because we've now done as part of the podcast version of the Review of Death, we've done all of the first 3 Doctor Who stories.
Yeah. That's true, isn't it?
Don't expect us to be getting onto Marco Polo anytime soon.
Unless they find it.
Unless they find it, in which case we'll be right on it.
Yeah. No, I'm glad we went back to revisit that. Like you said, we did it because we lost poor William Russell a little bit earlier this year, who incredibly returned to Doctor Who, a couple of years back. He's in the Guinness World Records, isn't he, for like the most consistent character or something. I don't know what the exact title is.
Is it like the longest gap between appearances or something like that? The longest
gap between appearances, that's it, yeah. Fantastic. He's superb. Love Ian Chesterton, love Barbara. They're an amazing TARDIS crew. And yeah, you see it here, don't you, really? They're great together. They work really, really well. So, Billy, what next? Where are we going next on our travels through time and space? Space and time.
It's a bit of a downer, unfortunately.
And sideways.
And all of that.
God.
So, I put this... unfortunately. I put this in the list because when the series 14 finale came out, Russell was very keen on letting people know there are some stories that you need to watch if you want to get a flavour of what this finale is going to be like. And thinking about it, I mean, we haven't watched the ones that he listed yet, with the exception of a couple. I don't know what the fuck he's going on about, but we might very well find out. So this is looking ahead a little bit. Just I'll start you off on a high, and then I'll let you down. So not next episode, but the episode after that, we're going to be doing Spearhead from Space, which he listed as one of those stories.
Nice. How does Spearhead from Space have any relation to the Empire of Death?
God knows. And do you want to know, there's another episode that we're going to do. We're going to do it next week that has even less to do, I would imagine, with Empire of Death, but he included it on his list. Next week, we're going to do A Good Man Goes to War.
Oh, fucking hell, no! Oh, God.
So we'll have fun wrapping up series 6.
Oh, God. And he's going to leave me. I'm literally, if I'm going to say, I'm going to go watch this, just watch Deep Breath.
Look, give it a fortnight. We'll do Spearhead soon, but you just got to sit through this with me.
That's true.
And then the week after that, we've got The Woman Who Fell to Earth. So yeah, fucking hell, she probably will walk out the door, wouldn't she?
Oh God, yeah.
But in the meantime, if you don't want to watch fucking The Good Man Goes to War, or you don't want to watch any of the episodes that we've got coming up, then don't worry, because we've got a Patreon that's full of lots of fun things. Yes. Last week, episode 3 of 00 Rod, our James Bond review series, came out. We've got our Dalek tier list coming out next week. Yeah. So, you can stick with that.
Good stuff indeed. Well, in that case, have a good week, everybody. See you all next time for A Good Man Goes to War and Matt shoots himself in the face. Goodbye.
A good man doesn't go to war because he's just shot himself in the head.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Ta-ra.